Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the channel. Google has reported earnings. The stock is up about 4, almost 5% here in after hours. This is sending Amazon higher. This is sending Meta higher. This is sending Tesla higher. Pretty much all of your Mag 7. Now, here in this video, I will share with you Google's earnings, why this looks so good, why it's having a positive effect on the markets. Even you could see here in after hours, the S&P is trading higher, around 0.25%, even though, as I explained in the prior video, Google's earnings are like not the big earnings this time around. This time around, it's about Amazon, it's about Apple, not about, you know, advertisers to a certain extent. But it is a good sign if, you know, from what Google has to say. Now, also, we will discuss what to look forward to coming tomorrow in our markets. But let's be honest here. I think something big is coming. I think a big trade announcement is coming. Probably a delay of tariffs on China. Like we've seen with everyone else, you're probably going to get that pause on the tariffs soon to start negotiations. That's my opinion. I will explain that here in this video, and it could cause a pretty aggressive short squeeze in Tesla because of how big that would be for Tesla. As we've talked about on this channel before, there's a real risk that grows by the day that Chinese consumers may pull back from American brands. The faster this trade situation gets resolved, the better it is for Tesla. Now, at this point, if you strip out the economic uncertainty that's from these tariffs and the positive that would come from a pause of these tariffs on China, there's not a whole lot going wrong for Tesla right now. It seems like the brand damage, as people were calling it, really non-existent. Tesla, besides shutting down their factory for over a month, all of their factories for over a month, actually, in context, had pretty good earnings. Like, it could have been much worse. There's very strong demand for Tesla. Robotaxis are coming as scheduled. Optimus is continuing as previously, you know, guidance, right? A couple thousand Optimus bots by the end of this year, more larger production next year, and continuing to ramp on after that. There's not a whole lot holding Tesla back here besides the tariffs and some of the economic pressures. And if that trade deal gets worked out with China, or even, again, a pause of the current tariffs, that's going to be very positive for Tesla. And short sellers have already started to kind of get ahead of that and cover on some short positions to reduce some of their downside exposure. And I think that's interesting. Today, you had millions of shares that were covered by, 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So we'll take a look at what the final number is for the day today. But nonetheless, I do think this could cause a move well into the 300s. So ladies and gentlemen, we will talk about that as well in this video. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already. Thank you for joining today, and let's get started. So first and foremost, you have Google's earnings, or Alphabet, EPS at $2.81. The estimate was $2.01, so that was much better than expected. Revenue came in at $90.23 billion, better than $89.1 billion. That was the estimate. Google ad revenue, $66.89 billion. The estimate, $66.39 billion, so that was a beat as well. Operating income beat handsomely, coming in at 30.61%, or 30.61 billion. The estimate, 28.86 billion. Revenue excluding TAC came in at 76.49 billion versus 75.4 billion. They approved an additional buyback of 70 billion shares and announced a 5% boost to the dividend. Now that's interesting. That's the part that I think is more or less moving the broader market right now. Yes, it's good that, advertising beat and revenue beat and all of those things are good. But if they're approving another $70 billion worth of buybacks and boosting their dividend, that doesn't sound like a company that's bracing for an economic disaster, okay? Companies, they don't do those kind of things before recessions or before things get much worse in the economy. Not even recession, just things get worse. Like, That was not happening in 2022. If anything, companies were like suspending their dividends, or in a lot of cases, just not issuing buybacks. Okay. So I think that's a sign of confidence from Google, and getting a sign of confidence from Google when markets have been under a lot of pressure, I mean, is something that Wall Street is going to like. And this is obviously a positive development, but we're so news driven. We're so headline driven right now. You got to be careful because, even with good news here today, gone tomorrow, could, be how things shake out. Now, with that said, again, I do think there is something big coming for markets. I see in different ways a lot of hedge funds and institutions right now, they're positioning for the long side of things. I mean, just keep this in mind. Look, right? Tuesday, markets were up 2.6% on the SPY. Wednesday, you were up 1.55%. Today, up 2.1%, not including the move higher in after hours. You have rallied over 1% for 3 days in a row. That has not happened in a long time. That is a sign of probably some good news coming. Let's face it, hedge funds, institutions, billionaires, they have more information than we do, okay? If you don't know that, now you do. You should accept that, okay? That's just how the game is. It's rigged in the short term. It's rigged positively in the long term because, I mean, hedge funds, institutions, these money managers, they're focused on the short term. They're not as focused on the long term. And that's why long-term investing, you tend to outperform, Wall Street over time, as long as you are obviously doing your due diligence, not investing in crap companies or whatnot. So I do think something big is coming for markets very soon. Within the next couple of hours, if not the next couple of days, I think we're going to get a positive China headline. First, I think it's going to be a pause, and then it's going to be negotiations on the tariff rates, okay? Now, option activity today was not great. You had 177 different trades in Tesla from hedge funds and institutions, totaling $473.72 million, with a positive order value of 16%. If you look at what the shorts did today, ended the day at about 2.01 million shares that were covered. Okay. That is phenomenal. That is, about as bullish of a thing as you could see happen. Now, short interest of free flow is still up like 40% just over the course of the last month or so. You went from about 2.1% short interest up to 2.95%. Now you're back down to 2.73%. So definitely still very high levels of short interest. You have 76.5 million shares sold short. And I think, again, when you look at things from kind of a non-political way, what changed since Tesla was $488, right? Markets were a little bit more optimistic then, sure. Expectations for the economy have come down, sure, but nothing has really changed yet besides the tariffs, and we don't know what impact that's going to have on the economy. So if you get a China deal and we only had, let's call it 2 or 3 weeks of tariff, high tariffs on China, how much damage did that really do in the economy? That's what people are going to say. And I think there's a lot of people right now that are overly bearish, overly concerned about the economy, at least in the short term, okay? Whether or not those fears or those concerns are going to materialize, I don't know. It's going to take months for that to actually show up in the data, okay? With the way that the data is collected, how lagged the data is, it could be July by the time we're actually seeing any impacts from the tariffs, right? June, July-ish. So in the short term, over the next month or so, I think you could see a pretty aggressive rally in markets, but really in certain stocks like Tesla. Still down like 45% from all-time highs, even after the rally from the lows from, that 213 level, and really from just a couple of days ago on Tesla earnings. You've seen a little bit of a rally here, right? specifically, you've seen about a 16.5% rally. But the fact of the matter is you're still down big on this year. And I think there's a lot of people, a lot of Wall Street that's short right now that does not want to miss the upside, right? And I think that's why when that headline comes out, you're going to see a sharp move higher in Tesla and in broader markets. Now, again, back to what I was saying earlier, the longer this does go on, though, and this is a risk, the more likely you are to see Chinese consumers pull back from American products, okay? They did this to Japan, they did this to South Korea, and those products never recovered, okay? Talking cars, we're talking, other products like that, okay? This happened decades ago. The Chinese economy has definitely changed over that course, right? It's a little different than it was a couple of decades ago, nonetheless. But they will push back against American products if this becomes more of a polarizing situation, okay? Much the same way as probably Americans would, or anyone would in the world that is a nationalistic kind of country that takes pride in their country, okay? So every day this situation goes on, it is a larger and larger risk. Not to mention, there are certain components that Tesla gets from China they just can't get anywhere else for some of their vehicles that are subject to tariffs. There was a headline today that Trump is thinking about exempting some of those specific products, probably battery materials, something like that. We don't have the details. That's really just a rumor at this point. But to really get away from all tariffs for a little while, I think would serve Tesla very well from, again, the tariffs, but also the risk of the Chinese consumer pulling back, because that is a real risk if that did start to happen, okay? And that's something not a lot of people are talking about right now, but we do need to be careful of. Now, today we had durable goods orders that came in at positive 9.2%. They surged. Durable goods orders excluding transportation came in at 0%. The estimate was positive 0.3%. Initial jobless claims came in at 222,000. That was in line with estimates. And existing home sales plunged, okay? Way lower than expected. Existing home sales plunged as well, negative 5.9%. Estimate was 3%. So the data today was not great. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock in the morning, we will get Michigan consumer sentiment. You're expecting 50.8. Last month was 57.0. So headline numbers are expected to come down quite a bit, but it's really the inflation expectations that are going to be huge. So 1-year inflation expectations are expected to rise to 6.7%. 5-year inflation expectations are expected to rise to 4.4%. Okay, so that would, definitely be bad if we even exceed those expectations. So hopefully they come in lower. If they do, that would be a great sign. This is maybe going to capture some of the pause on the global tariffs, not China, but global tariffs that maybe bring down some of those inflation expectations. But again, it's Democrats that are skewing the survey. And unfortunately, even though this is such a political survey, there's a lot of people that are paying attention to this right now. There's a lot of people that are looking at this in Wall Street, and I think it's really the wrong survey to look at. When you look at market-based measures of inflation break-evens or inflation expectations, they are much more well-behaved than the political surveys. But right now, Wall Street is paying a lot of attention to those political surveys. So I do think tomorrow, Trump does have kind of a history at this point of giving you news on Fridays for whatever reason. Like he tends to give us news on Fridays. Fridays tend to be big days. Mondays tend to be big days. I wouldn't be surprised any moment now if we get news of the tariffs being paused. Because why? Trump can always put them back on if China doesn't want to negotiate. But a good way to start a negotiation would be get rid of your what China is calling laughable tariffs. Like, it's basically an embargo on China, okay? Get rid of those, actually start negotiations. That could be coming anytime now. And I think, honestly, Tesla would probably rally 10+% if that happened, let's say tomorrow or on Monday or whatever day that happens. You're going to see a large move. And it's something a lot of Wall Street is going to be caught off sides by, because even though I think some of the Wall Street guys are kind of positioning for this, again, with the 3-day rally that we've seen so far, there's a lot of Wall Street that is still very bearish, that is negative, that is not really looking at the light at the end of the tunnel, if you will, that are assuming that all hope is lost for the economy. And I think that's the wrong way to be going about our markets right now. Of course, you need to be prepared for things to go wrong. You need to be prepared for recession, but you also need to be prepared for the upside. And I don't see a lot of people that are prepared for the upside at this point. So let me know what you guys think about this down below in the comment section. Ladies and gentlemen, have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you in the next one.